This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. My guest today is Mr. Gabriel Faria, recently retired Chief Executive Officer of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. He's gone into another realm he's called it Caribbean advocacy. He started this group. He says there's need for great advocacy, particularly for the business community across the country. He says that he's always advocated that a strong private sector means a strong economy and a strong country. He's described as having done extremely well by positioning the Chamber in Trinidad and Tobago as the voice of business in the country. Mr. Faria, good morning.
Good morning, Andy. Thank you very much for having me on.
All right, so let me ask you, you're not convinced that we have a strong private sector in Trinidad and Tobago?
We have a strong private sector. The reality is that when you look at our financial institutions and our conglomerates, when you look at their performance, they're doing amazingly well. In fact, some people say they're doing too well. Part of my concern really is that, we have 30,000 businesses registered. We probably have more like just under 10,000 really operating. And those smaller businesses are the ones that need help. The large businesses, the large financial institutions, the energy companies, they're doing very well, especially where the price of energy is going. But our small businesses are suffering and they don't have a voice. And when I left the chamber, the one thing that people, and I did not advocate for chamber members. I want to be clear. I advocated for a better country because ultimately a better business environment helps chamber members. And many businesses that were not members of the chamber reached out to me and said, who is going to speak for me going forward? And that is what drove my decision to create this network called Caribbean Advocacy.
All right, so you have some big and strong ones, and you have a lot of smaller ones not so strong. Is the country in sort of the equation that you're making here, in your view, is the country prosperous or not, Trinidad and Tobago? Are we a prosperous country or not?
I think we're morally and financially bankrupt. Now, just to be clear, and you may remember this, Andy, I think we're relatively close in age. You may remember in the 70s and 80s, the Jamaican business community was doing amazingly well, but all of the business people lived in Miami or Toronto, and they conducted business in Jamaica. Haiti as an economy is, if you want to say, in almost a disaster, but there are businesses, so there's always businesses that will do well. But we have to look beyond the business. Businesses cannot achieve their full potential if our citizens aren't doing well. And that is where I want to have strong businesses by ensuring we have a prosperous country for all our citizens.
All right, and so from what you're saying, that your focus will be more on lifting up the smaller businesses rather than the bigger ones, because you think the bigger enterprises can handle their stories, as people would say?
Yes. So when you look at our larger businesses, and in fact, you look at the results of the publicly listed companies today. I think Guardian came out. When you look at the businesses, they're all doing very well. Where the people reach out to me, and you remember, I think it was in 2017, I raised the issue of battery funds. And going through the country, I like to drive around the country, go and get double somewhere, or go and eat foods in some roadside stand. A business person walked up to me, I didn't know him, and he told me, he says, $3 million. And I said, sorry? He says, that's how much VAT refunds I have. Now, I don't know the gentleman, I didn't know him before that. We subsequently started communicating. But there's so many businesses, so many small businesses that are on their backs. And what's happening in our country today is not helping them. The big ones will survive. You know what the number one strategic intent of every business is today, Andy? Diversify country risk. Think about that.
What does it mean, diversified country risk?
So if you look at the financial institutions, you look at the large conglomerates, they're all looking at diversifying their income stream outside of Trinidad. However, many of them are achieving it. I mean, when you look at, I think, Republic Financial Holdings, I think they have reached a threshold where more than 50% of their income is now made outside of Trinidad. However, the small businesses, the small manufacturer, the small retailer, the distribution company who is embedded in Trinidad, they does not have that luxury. So we can end up with prosperity, we can end up with businesses doing very well, but many of our businesses who are anchored in Trinidad and Tobago are finding themselves in a desperate situation, and they need someone to speak for them.
All right, I see I know the emphasis is on going regional with it, but if you say that, you make that equation between the bigger and the smaller businesses, and you say there's not a voice enough for them, but that there's this string of this chain of what is called the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers in the country. To me, that seeks to represent the smaller businesses, right? Tunapuna, Samoa, Sangre Grande, St. Augustine, Chaguanas, etc., etc.
So when you looked at it, and you may have seen recently, they had a number of organizations that left the Confederation. And just to be clear, we are not setting up a chamber.
All right.
People have reached out to me and says, I want to be a member, how much does it cost? There's no charge. We want to support businesses. So the Confederation really started off out of regional chambers, which were focused on their regional needs. And they decided to create a confederation. And unfortunately, what happened with that grouping is that the needs of a Chaguanas or a Debe may not be the needs of a Tunapuna. So they have different motives. We need to focus on the big issues that are affecting our small businesses. The challenge with getting a container cleared, the challenge with getting VAT refunds, the reality of crime, I mean, how that affects the way consumers think. And we want people to invest in Trinidad, not invest outside of Trinidad.
Yeah, so when you talk about a great need to represent the business, that's the kind of thing you're talking about, not the big business organizations. Because I was going to ask then, what is the purpose and how you see the role and function of this thing called the CPS, or the Caribbean Private Sector Organization? But then that's, again, you would say that's for the bigger boys and girls?
When you look at it, the CARICOM Private Sector Organization was, I think, initially conceptualized. Prime Minister Motley visited Trinidad, I think, in 2018, and met with some of the larger leaders and business leaders. And when it was originally conceptualized, originally started, it really focused on some of the key businesses, what you want to call owners of capital across the region. Now, ultimately, that will filter down to smaller businesses. But again, they are looking at CARICOM single market and economy. They are looking at the whole aspects of how do we get corporate registrations across the region, how do we get IP across the region, how do we look at company law. So they are looking at a different aspect of the needs of businesses. And they are, by nature, they are naturally focused on businesses that are across CARICOM. What I am looking at, and what I've done by reaching out to other retired executives like myself, is to look at small businesses in each of the islands and understand their pain points and see if there's commonality. And another key point you would have noted in your article, Andy, was that I talked about unresponsible leaders, and some people reached out to me saying, we are responsible. But it was also an initiative to try to mobilize people. I mean, I read today's paper, Diane Mahabir Wyatt. Try to mobilize respected, responsible people who can speak on behalf of the wider community.
Yeah. And one of the things you say is that there are people who are coming forward to assist and to enlist, as it were, in it. But you say that some of them their identities will be kept secret precisely because of the fear of victimization. But I mean, wouldn't the people whose job it is to know who these people are in any case?
Right, so there are two aspects of this. First thing is that the goal for Trinidad is to really find if you want to call it, a council of responsible leaders. And I am not. I have no aspiration to be part of that council. I'm talking about people like a Terry Farrell, Diane Mahavir Wyatt, people who have walked the course. They're respected across multiple platforms. Let those people be visible. You see, today, and as I said, I read the story on Diane Mahavir Wyatt today, and a minister attacking her. And I mean, when I spoke, somebody attacked me, and when you spoke, somebody attacked you. If we all speak independently, we're going to get shot down independently. If we can get a group of responsible leaders who will be visible, that can speak about the issues that are affecting our country, because we're not just financially bankrupt, we're morally bankrupt, we're ethically bankrupt, right? And we are, because our citizens want that. So we have to lift our game. We have to get a group of people who are going to talk about governance and transparency, and we have to make sure that they are going to stand for what's right. The people I'm talking about are the members, the businesses, the business community, members who have issues. A member told me in the chamber, Gabriel, you know what your role is? Your role is to speak on my behalf, because I can't speak because I'm afraid of being victimized. So that's where that's what my role is, to support those people.
Right. Now, I'm glad you raised that, because I wanted to ask you, so that statement that was attributed to you, it was in a private chat, and it got where it shouldn't have gotten, and the Prime Minister said what he said in public. Did you get Did you find that you got the backing from those people from whom you should have gotten kind of support in that environment?
Yes, I can tell you that I was a number of people reached out to me to offer support. A number of business chambers reached out to offer support. But, Andy, what I said in that chat, and, that's such old news now, but what I said in that chat was irrelevant. What I was doing was focusing on focus on transparency and good governance. And the points I was raising was not the points that created this issue was not what I said in the chat, it was what I said.
We lost you there on
Sorry, yeah. It was about the government. It was about the government, the way we do our accounts. We use cash accounting. So our accounts are not accurate. It was about the amounts owed to suppliers. It was about the fact that union negotiations have been unsettled, haven't been settled for as much as 9 years. Those things were what caused a repercussion of someone trying to silence me.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the issue.
And he didn't. He took it personally, and he said things about you that were unflattering. Did you get the support that you think you thought you deserved in that scenario?
And it's interesting because I speak to most government ministers, including the Prime Minister now. Right, and I suppose that the timing of my comments were not the best, because of course we were coming up to the election, and you might remember part of the comment was I was trying to sway voters. I was not trying to sway voters. I was trying to advocate on behalf of all those businesses that were owed billions of dollars, right? That were catching their skin to survive. So I don't take that personally. We're past that stage. I mean, there are some ministers, and again, looking at the Mahavir Wyatt story today, we have a minister that's talking about the fact that some sort of water riots. I mean, I read the story the other day. A minister saying, "Don't talk to you because you are UNC." I mean, come on, we have to pass that stage. We are all about country. We are about country. We are about making our people stronger and better, and a stronger government. A more transparent government, and if we hold our government, and when I say government, I mean ruling party and opposition to higher standard, we will do better.
Yeah, and there are in Trinidad and Tobago, there are lots of issues you think require urgent attention. You say that crime per se is not the issue. It is a symptom and a manifestation of weaknesses and things that have been allowed to go on for too long without proper attention.
We talked about that, Andy, and I mean, as citizens, when something happens, whatever it is, be it crime, be it fraud, be it non-payment of taxes owed to citizens. We look at the specific. But the one thing you learn in business, Andy, is that those things are symptoms of a much bigger problem. And the problem we have is really a lack of leadership on both sides of our parliament. It's almost become a show, like a wrestling match. When you look at parliament, it's really entertainment value, who's scoring what points. And while we as citizens, and we encourage it, are laughing, whining, dancing, and be happy to get whatever political patronage is handed out, we are dying as a country. We're becoming financially, morally, and ethically bankrupt. And it's interesting because this is not a ruling party and opposition. Even in the cabinet, I have seen where a minister has a PR person that works for him, and that PR person is attacking members of his own cabinet. And how can you have a cohesive strategy when you're attacking your own people?
All right, we're going to take a break. We come back. Stay with us. This is 10 Questions. My guest, Mr. Gabriel Faria. Stay with us.
Do you think you have what it takes to be a comedian?
For a passenger to come in a taxi with $100 and don't say nothing, I see driver get takeaway on stretcher for that.
WESN is giving you the platform to showcase your comedic skills.
What? I don't really know how to play guitar.
If you think you have jokes, then WESN is the place for you.
You left the house in your old Bermuda jersey and your match pants, track pants quite up on the belly of Beyonce. Beyonce was never in cadets, no!
Our platform provides a space for creatives to express themselves. And now it's your turn.
So what you got, man? With a smile.
Give us a call, 628-5835. We bring the laughs, you bring the jokes. Hey, you wanna jam?
You sure, boy?
Yo, what we jam?
Bruh, let me read that script. Hey, are they ready for We Comedy Jam? We taking it live. Come online with us now. Come join us for special taping of We Comedy Jam at Kaiser Blues Cafe. We bring the laughs, you walk with the drinks money. We Comedy Jam live tapings at Kaiser Blues Cafe. Send us your name to get listed. We Comedy Jam, only on WESN Content Capital.
So, we not jamming then?
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back. This is 10 Questions. My guest, Mr. Gabriel Faria. Caribbean Advocacy, that's the new initiative he's launched on. He says those coming on board must be registered for tax purposes, for NIS purposes, and he says we want to encourage people to comply. He says he's want to advocate on the questions of transparency and campaign finance and procurement legislation and other matters. Let's talk about that, campaign finance and the transparency.
So the reality, Andy, as I said, is when we look at the issues we face as a country, be it crime, be it payments to the labor unions, all of those issues, those are symptoms of a much bigger problem. And they start with issues like campaign finance. They start with our whichever government gets in power having to entertain their financiers by supporting them. So we end up with contracts for landscaping or contracts for something else, and nobody sees that. So if we deal with that at the start, and if we deal with procurement, and if we deal with those issues and provide transparency, I said in that article that the government should be made to account on a quarterly basis or monthly basis how much money is owed to taxpayers, how much is owed to suppliers. Because what it does right now is I hear economists talk, and they say, our debt to GDP ratio. That's a false number. It's a false number because there's significant debt that's not recorded in our books because we do cash accounting. We run this country like a parlor. I mean, we have a bookkeeper trying to be a CFO for our country, so we are running it like a parlor. So when we don't pay a supplier, we don't say that's an accounts receivable. We say, well, when I pay him in 10 years' time, then I'll book the expense. So we are starting off, we have to deal with those big issues. And as citizens, we have to hold our government to a higher standard. I believe that we have to recognize that our government, our ruling party and our opposition are mirrors of us as citizens.
All right, can I ask you, what has been the response from people across the region, elsewhere in the Caribbean, to this announcement, since you've come out with it, and people seeing probably the need to get involved in issues such as these at this level, at a new level, so to speak?
So I have been talking about a range of issues, and I have to break it down sometimes because I'm dealing with a number of different aspects. So one, Caribbean advocacy really, one of its tenets will be to support businesses across the region to ensure that they can achieve their best. They can achieve their best economic position by improving the ease of doing business and so on. So that's a very general perspective. If there are issues in Jamaica or in Barbados, and I've reached out, as I said, to retired executives like myself, we're actually talking about creating a retired executives network so we can leverage the skills we have across the region. But that is a different issue. Trinidad has unique issues. You see, Jamaica and Barbados recognizes the importance of their private sector and the role they play in creating a prosperous economy. Unfortunately, in Trinidad, for many years, the private sector was really second because energy was what drove our economy. And again, with what's going on with this war in Ukraine, again, energy is going to take the forefront, and it could distract us from fixing our private sector. So different economies have different needs in terms of the bigger issues. So let's just clarify that I have gotten so many people in Trinidad who reached out to me. I mean, an organization I had a meeting with recently, the Strategy Institute of Trinidad and Tobago. They have done excellent work on creating a roadmap for Trinidad and Tobago. And those things are going to have to occur because all of us are not homogeneous. We don't have the same issues. And I mean, they have a huge group of people who are working with them to develop the strategy. But they now need to become visible. They can't be working in the background. So different issues for different markets and different challenges that we need to address.
Yeah, and there's sometimes it seems as though there needs to be some kind of independent agency to adjudicate and sometimes to intervene in disputes and issues country to country, because there have been these times, and they will continue, I suppose, in the absence of this kind of initiative, where you have issues between the private sector in Trinidad and Tobago and the one in Jamaica or the one in Barbados, where at times they complain that their markets are being flooded with goods from Trinidad and Tobago and not any comparable measure of reciprocity. Right.
That's a very good point, Andy. In fact, I see that is where the CPSO, as the recognized private sector organization and heads of government, I see them dealing with those larger issues. We have to understand that we are going to be a group of either retired executives, retired or people who are in business that are willing to speak openly. supporting businesses and trying to ensure that they are given the best opportunity. When there's an issue we cannot address, it will have to go to either the CPSO. There's also something called CARICHAM, a regional network of chambers, and we will interface with them to ask for their support, and even locally, the respective business service organizations. What you will notice, Andy, is that the TNT chamber, at least when I was there, I found we were very vocal on some key issues. But then there are some business service organizations that don't want to get into this public discussion. They prefer to stay in the background and let somebody else take the lash, so to speak.
Because ultimately they see it as this kind of thing, advocacy at that level, as hurting the bottom line, which is sometimes 90% of the reason to be in, right?
You have to realize that we are made up of a country where our government drives a lot of revenue. So when you have an organization, that organization is made up of board members. Those board members, many of those board members may sit on a government board, or they may have government business. So it makes it difficult for them to speak openly. And that's why people like Diana Habir-Wyatt, people like Terry Farrell, Wendell Motley, those types of names are what come to mind as to people who, Ken Gordon. I saw the idea, he was 92. I saw him driving, and I said, look at this. This is a statesman. These are the kind of people we need to mobilize, our leaders that can speak and come out and say, we need to do this right. And we need to find those people. It may not be those people. I'm using those as sort of mirrors as to those are the people we need as our leaders. Because right now, and the term Terry used, or Lloyd Best, I think, was the one that coined the phrase unresponsible leaders, is we don't want to speak out because we are worried about either losing our contract, or we're worried about our social engagement with the political directorate, and we have to pass that stage.
Yeah, and this organization is seeking to help us do that.
Yes, it will allow. I am hoping that we can. So while we will create advocacy, I'm hoping alongside that we will be able to bring together a group who we will participate or support, and let them speak on some of the bigger issues that are affecting Trinidad and Tobago. I am hoping we can create what I call responsible leadership. As I told you, this group, the Strategy Institute of Trinidad and Tobago, they sent me their plan, and it's an amazing document. But we now need to move that from concept to execution, and we need our leaders to support it. And the Economic Development Advisory Board did a report of what had to be done. The Roadmap to Recovery Committee did a report of what had to be done. Nothing's being done on that because the people who have to execute it didn't even participate in developing it. So those things fall on the wayside. We have great ideas. Where we fail is execution. And that, the Prime Minister talked about private sector in the public sector. I would like to suggest that we help our ministers and our opposition to understand that these excuses, I'm sorry, but I have to refer to this. When government ministers start to talk about it's not our fault, power, that was not our fault. The reality is you're responsible for delivering power to consumers. It's your fault. Now, it's somebody else on the back of it, but it's your fault. Or a minister saying, I'm not responsible. Or a police commissioner saying there's a vicious cycle with how our citizens are, and that's what's causing the crime. Or a minister who, when we call out and ask about VAT refunds and tax refunds, and start the courtesy to respond. That's not how you lead a country. You have to, in the private sector, you are taught that you are responsible, and you have to take action.
All right. So as we speak here now today, what's the next step? How you move the needle forward on Caribbean advocacy? So
we will continue to look at the work we're doing for many of these small businesses in terms of looking at helping them to address the ease of doing business. We'll continue to speak out in the public domain. We'll continue to work through. I'm a member of a local business organization. We'll continue to work through the local chambers and the regional chambers where possible if we're not getting the support there, we will then come out, like I am here today, to speak on those issues where if it is a manufacturing issue or finance issue, we will work through that organization. But we will continue to advocate for those businesses and as on a regional basis or on a local basis as applicable. However, alongside that, I am personally trying to create or to support or to encourage the development of what I will call a leadership council of respected leaders who will speak out, who have nothing to lose. And when I say nothing to lose, who will speak out without fear, right? And will not be and you see, when one person speaks out, they get attacked. We need leaders who, when they speak out in mass, it's clear that you can't attack them.
Yeah, because they have a backing that is formidable, and that will not be.
Yeah, one would be attacked. I mean, come on, water riots. I mean, really?
All right.
And these are UFC, really?
All right. We're going to leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Faria, Gabriel Faria, launching out on this new venture, Caribbean Advocacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andy.
All right. Certainly, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.